Okay, so as an exercise, just pictorially speaking, what perspective drawing is really a way to imitate the illusion of three-dimensional space on a two-dimensional picture plane. Now, like I said last time, we're readers of two dimensions, and so to this effect, what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and just make a. Oh, guys, I have to deal with the cat for a minute. I'm sorry. Hold on. Go. All right. Sorry, guys. Okay. So what I did here was I just drew a horizon line. It can be anywhere, and you guys can do this. You can even just do it quickly, like if you wanted to just do like a little quick sketch in your sketchbook like this to remember. But this is handy if you're ever going to do any drawings where you need some perspective to make it look out of your imagination, or if you're making an imaginary place. This is something that could help you. So the first one I'm going to do is just 1 point perspective. And a 1 point perspective can be anything. Usually you could put that dot in the middle, and that would be what's called a single point vanishing point. Now, in reality, when we're walking around outside, you have like this multitude of vanishing points. As soon as you turn your head, the vanishing point will move all across in these different little dots, right? And so there are these kind of multitude of vanishing points. So this is a theoretical, it's not a real, it's just a theoretical, but it does have its roots in the kind of optics that they were exploring in the 17th century. So let's say I wanted to draw a house, and probably some of you have done this before, and you could just draw a cube if you want. I like to draw houses because it's more fun. And so my house can be kind of janky looking. I don't really care. Let's say I'm just kind of sketching it. And what I could do with my little house here, I've made an A-frame house, is if I go from the points, each one of these points, and I connect it here, what I can do with my ruler is I can connect, say, the corner here to here, right? I can connect this corner to the spot there, and that's my vanishing point, right? So all lines converge at that point. And then I can do this, right? And then behind, you guys can't really see it, but there's this kind of invisible, right, line behind, and it all kind of corresponds. And once I have that single vanishing point, then I can go ahead and put in the other elements of my house. And slowly but surely, these elements will allow me to create something that looks more or less in perspective. I could also put something up, say up a little, like it could cross the horizon line. And I'll make, now typically when things are further back on the horizon, they get smaller. So if I wanted to be sort of true, let's say I was trying to draw a little village or something, I could draw some other little shapes going around here. Maybe I'll draw like a kind of a flat topped roof here. Okay. So in single point perspective, what I would do is I could use my ruler, or I could just use my eye, or you could use any kind of a straight edge, really. You could use the side of paper pad, or okay. And then I can kind of put my lines in here, right? And I'll connect these here. So this will be my flat, my weird roofed. Maybe this is where everyone goes to play bingo or something. I don't know. All right. And then I can do like this. I can connect the roof there, get it up here, bring it okay. Yeah. And then this one right here, must be a really massive building. Because it's crossing the horizon line, it's no big deal. You can just connect these guys here. And so I can also put So here I have a variety of different houses. This one's a little bit crooked. It doesn't matter. But all this is kind of a theoretical way of putting things into perspective. Um, there are a number of artists, especially comic artists and manga, anime, any kind of animators. They're going to have these rules sort of stuck in their head. And so, for example, there will always be a type of a vanishing point somewhere. And so if I wanted to clean this up, and this was my horizon line, I have a single point, vanishing point for all these little things. Now, that could also go for windows, right? So I would keep this parallel here. And I could, so all I could, once I have these lines established, I can just put a window in and I can make this line, I can make a parallel line there, make a parallel line here, and parallel to this and to this, and then I have a nice window. Same here, right? Now this one right here, we're getting more of a bird's eye view of the chimney. Maybe I want to make, or the top, maybe I want to make a chimney. So I could just make a little chimney spot here. Now in my mind's eye, what I'm doing is I'm kind of connecting these dots down, but I'm also relying on this line right here to sort of show me, this line right here, to show me the relative position of a chimney if it were in the middle of my house like that. Now, because we've been doing value studies, if I wanted to make this slightly more complex, I could make the light source up here, right, shining this way. In which case, I could have shadows, right, coming across this way. And so I'm trying to keep my lines consistent, right? Because light coming from the sun will always be somewhat consistent, right? So that's single point perspective. All right. Now I'm going to do the same kind of thing, except this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2-point perspective. So I'll go ahead and create another little box on my page. And again, I'm just kind of eyeballing the squareness of my my ruler to the edge of my paper. After a while, you get kind of good at it, kind of eyeballing it. Okay, so here I have my picture plane again, and this time what I'll do is I'll put the horizon line up a little bit higher. Okay. So this is 2-point perspective. And this is the horizon line. I was going to put HR for horizon line. Okay, horizon line right there. And on this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have 2 points that are going to be my vanishing points. Oh my God, come on, please don't do that. And so if I wanted to say, so for example, if I was walking around the corner of a house, this is where this might come in handy. So let's say I'm just going to draw a single line straight up and down like this. And that's going to be the corner of a building, say. And in this case, what I'll do is I'll make it kind of smaller. I'll make like a skyscraper. And so I have lines are also called vectors. And then the vectors have directions. So I'm going to connect the top of this line and the bottom of this line here. And then I'm going to connect the bottom of my vector or my line there. And I'm going to make like a high-rise building, you guys. Another thing you can also do is we can also do one over here. We'll cross the horizon line. Now, so I kind of messed that one up. Let's see if we can get that right. There we go. Okay. Now, in this case, this is sort of like a bird's eye view, and looks like I have the leaning tower of office buildings over here. And so I guess what I'll do is I'll try to make it a little bit straighter using my ruler. And so these would possibly be the ends of the building, right? And so in that case, what I want to do is to make sure that I have the proper perspectival, positioning. I would connect the ends of these here and there, and then I have this here, right? So let's say this were like a city block of some kind, and maybe I wanted to make like a sidewalk that kind of came around. Right? And so now what I can do is I can move in here and I can start to lay in some lines that might refer to like a window or maybe a row of windows. And this is something that you can do kind of on the fly. And notice how I'm changing the directions of my lines. So this one's kind of parallel to this one, and then it kind of fans out. And so that's something that you can do just kind of with your mind's eye and just kind of like imagine the different windows, and then you can come back in here. And so oftentimes when I'm just creating like an imaginary world or an imaginary kind of a place, I'll just knock in some buildings that look like this as placeholders. So again, this is 2 point. Now I'm going to do a building that crosses the horizon line up here, right? And so this would be more typical. So this would be like if you were in an airplane or up in a building that was taller than, say, a building that. Sorry, guys, my cat messed up my thing. There we go. Or maybe you would be like up high or in an airplane, but more often than not, we're going to have buildings that are they're going to be taller than us. And when a building is taller than you, it's going to cross the horizon line. And so, and by the way, this is just a theoretical model. It's not meant. Actually, I could do another point over here. Ideally, you'd want your corner to be in the in between the two vanishing points. So in this case, this building would actually kind of come like this. So this would be like a single. Okay, so then if I had a square building that was going down the side of the street this way, I'm just going to use my single point perspective in this situation because I'm pretending like there's a building right here in front of me that's straight. Typically when you're doing this kind of an arrangement, what I ought to have done is done something like this, where I have a building that's really tall in the middle, and then I can connect the lines. So from that vector there, and then down here, and over here, there's my original vanishing point there, and here. And so now I have the ability, well, actually what I'll do is just to make it interesting, I'll make this building kind of go behind that building. Just erasing for clarity's sake. And then on this one, this will be the one that's sort of right in the front. I'll erase these little guidelines that I created for this one. And I want to explain what I did there. And then here, I just can make a parallel line that matches with this one like that. So in this case, what I've got now is I have two buildings on the same block, and I can start rhyming these lines with the vectors. Now notice that where the line crosses the horizon, I'm going to have a flat line, and then it's going to fan upwards from the horizon line there, downwards from there. So again, these are just tricks that you can use if you're just kind of drawing out of your imagination. And I'll just pretend that this is a big flat building that is kind of right up against, facing it. In this case, since I can't see the other side there, I can kind of use this as my guides here. Okay. Clean that up, and then so those were my guidelines, and now I have a nice kind of straight building here, and I could make like a little door or something here, maybe some windows. Now, because I'm facing this, I can keep those more or less straight. But here, the windows will be, you know, starting to fan out from this point here. Yeah. I could also make the curb have some dimension. So let's say I wanted to, you know, give it some kind of a dimension so it looks like it's actually, you know, like an actual curb. I could kind of have it go like this a little bit. And the nice thing about connecting all these lines is that it gives you sort of a foreshortened angle view of the space that you would ordinarily just see. And as you move your head around, these little vanishing points would also change. And so this might be like the curb of the street or whatever. Okay, I could also do like a sidewalk here. I could put the corner maybe out here. Right. And so once, and I probably you guys have done this in high school or something like that. It also, has anybody done this before? It's probably seems pretty familiar.
Yeah, I did a assignment similar to this last semester.
Okay. What class was that?
Uh, I I think it was called art principles or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah, it's a real foundational kind of basic thing. Um, I only ever refer to this kind of like mentally when I'm drawing, but I don't use this when I'm drawing things in perspective in real life. What I rely on in real life is the sighting technique. So this is a 2-point perspective. So here we have the top of a building showing here. Over here, this is the building that's taller than us going over the horizon line. And same here. So I used 1-point perspective on this one because it was flat. And I used 1-point perspective on that one. And then these, I'm using the 2-point perspective here. Okay. Okay. So now, so that's 2-point perspective. Now what I'd like to show you is 3-point perspective. And then I think I'd like to show you, there's a guy named, I'll bring up a video of his and show you a little smidge of his drawing. I might fast forward it so you guys can look at it. But I'll go ahead and draw another. Now, 3-point perspective is perspective that is either worm eye view, like really down low, or bird's eye view, really up high. And this, like if you guys have ever been to New York, Chicago, Atlanta, any of those, Los Angeles, any of those cities that have big, tall buildings, this would be something that you might kind of observe as you're walking down the street. So I'm going to do a 3-point perspective where I have I'm going to have a point here up above, and then I'm going to have a horizon line that's kind of lower here. Okay, and then I'm going to have a spot here, and I'm going to have a spot here. So here's my horizon line, and this is going to be 3-point perspective. Okay, and what I'll do here is I'll draw the corner of a building. I'll make another building or a box up this way. And so if I'm standing on the corner looking straight up at the corner of a building, it'll go, it should go relatively straight up. And so here, what I'll do is I'm going to connect particular, so this is the bottom of that corner. I'm going to connect this one to here. Okay, that's one horizon line. This one to here, that, right? And then what I want to do is I want to draw the perimeters or the walls of my building. So I can do, let's see. I can put a point here, and then I'll put a point here, right? So this would typically be the limit of the building. But what I want to do is I want to try to if I have a vanishing point, I can put the vanishing point in the middle, which might make it make more sense than this vanishing point. So I'm going to erase it. Typically, these vanishing points are way off of the page, and this is a really extreme version. But I did want to show you. I did want to show you a typical way. So this, the extreme version of this. Oop, then down this way, and up here. Okay. Right. And so you can imagine if you're standing here, you're looking up, right? We have a building that's kind of shooting up in the sky, and if the vanishing, it's kind of getting narrower here, right? And then it's also vanishing in this way and in this way. I don't typically use this type of perspective in this extreme of an instance. This is a more stylized kind of version that you would use. But I thought what I could do is, there's a guy named Kim Jong-ji. Do you guys know who that is? He's he passed away tragically, very as a young. He couldn't have been more than maybe like 40s or something like that. But let me try to find a. He was an amazing artist. Let's see. Oops. And then what we'll do is we'll start in on drawing. We'll start in on drawing the interior. Oops, I don't want to do that. Stop share. Okay. So let me just pull up a video really quick to show you guys. I'll just show you a few minutes of it, and then you guys can kind of look it up on your own. So this, and I'll do a different share for you guys so you can see what I'm looking at here. Boop. And I'll put a link. I can put a link in our Canvas page so that you guys can see see the video if you want. All right. I don't know if there's any audio to this, but that's him. And one of the things that he uses is what's called like a fisheye view. And so something to pay attention to is, do you see how the laptop here is kind of receding into the background to a vanishing point? So in his mind, he has all these different vanishing points going on. So I'm going to pause it so I can show you guys something. So this thing right here, you can see that there's a vanishing point in his imagination out here somewhere. So if I connect the laptop lines, right? If I follow these trajectories right here, right? So they're all going to kind of converge somewhere up here. Now he's drawing this at a totally different angle. Now you'll notice that the front of the car will be wider, and then it will start to shrink down here. And so this is kind of like the this, and so and what's fascinating is as you get better at this, as he is, what you can start to do is you can start to do compound curves, compound angles. You can start to draw ellipses and different shapes that are in perspective. In other words, if they were walls, a straight wall, as I did with those exercises, this would be more or less like the equivalent of just like taking a cookie cutter and moving that out. So the vanishing length of this, you guys, would be somewhere out kind of similar to the laptop. But then what's happening is you have vanishing points that are going to start coming over here with this guy. And so what's really cool is that his drawings are really famous for these multiple vanishing points. Have you guys ever seen this artist before? Maybe some of you.
I don't think I have heard of this artist, but wow, like the amount of detail I see right now going on.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I saw an interview with him. I'll put the link in. It's worth watching. He's passed away, and he did have a studio in Japan, in Korea, I think, and some of the drawings. So they're not meant to look in quotes realistic, but they are what I would call representational, right? So they look like what, in other words, like the point of doing, say, manga or anime is not, it's not, the point of it is not realism. The point of it is enough realism where the techniques that you're using vanish in the face of the narrative that's being told through the pictures. So, and I guess one way I can kind of give you guys a perspective on this would be like, in my installation class yesterday, I was talking about Tolkien's, the willful suspension of disbelief, which allows your imagination to kind of go with the flow of something. And one of the tenets that, and this is not to say, this is not really to do, well, it is to do with Lord of the Rings, but that Tolkien was a philologist and also a classic scholar, specifically focusing on Icelandic mythology. And he was trying to make a case for the kind of the relevancy of studying mythology as an art form at a time when academically people were looking at things very sort of proto-scientifically or scientifically, and anything that dealt with supernatural kind of stuff is really not, okay. So I'm gonna pause it for a minute. Oops, let me do it. So check this out. So here's what I mean by multiple vanishing points. Okay, so let's take the side of this car right here. Okay, so if I were to trace this line out and this line out, it looks like there's a vanishing point for this car, right? That's out here somewhere, right? Now let's take the top of this thing right here. If I take that vanishing point and I lay a ruler on it, oops, come on mouse. That might come up there, and so on. And so this vanishing point for this tool chest is over here somewhere. This car right here is at a slight angle. That vanishing point is to the right of this vanishing point. And then the vanishing point of this turned cylinder is actually up there somewhere, okay? So what he's doing in his imagination is he's isolating elements in the drawing, and he's saying, I'm going to draw a car, this way, right? And so what it really looks like is if you guys have ever shot a picture with like a GoPro or a fisheye lens, maybe you have a fisheye lens attachment for your phone, you're going to get this sort of wrapping, and also we're at an angle, but you're going to get the sort of wrapped version of perspective. And so the reason I was bringing up Tolkien is because while if I were to look at this and I really diagnosed the drawing, right? Not that I would, but I would just say, like, I'd go into the drawing, I would say, okay, dude, you've got all these different vanishing points from all over the place. But the fact is that they make sense together. And so as an artist, what he's doing is he's implementing some of those sort of academic rules. So look over here, you can see now these vanishing points are going to be up off to the left up here. And then also these vanishing points on the box. So he's creating these little micro worlds with their own perspectival rules. So for example, you could consider the car one world. You could consider this table and this tent another world. You could consider this car another world. This guy's laptop is in another world, and so on. And so, so that's kind of that. This would be like the use of implementing in a really much more sophisticated way the academic approach to using perspective. So if you guys are interested, I can put some links into his artwork, and it's just really fun to watch. This is obviously a sped up video, which I like, but there are some interviews and stuff with him, and he talks really early on about how as a kid, I think he grew up kind of like not very well off, and the way that he would covet like a bike or whatever would be to draw it. And so he would draw the bike that he wanted over and over and over until the point that he had mastered the bicycle. And maybe it was something else, like a game console, or maybe it was like a dog or a cat, and he would just go crazy. And so eventually he started to do these sort of micro experiments of learning to draw. And remember early on in the class, you guys, that thing I'm just describing about Kim Jong-ji is that was his young stage of just giving himself an excuse to pay attention to something. And so it would be like if you guys are walking around outside or whatever, and you saw a beautiful flower, there might be an impulse initially to take a photo of it, to capture it, to keep it, to covet it, right? And drawing is the same way. It's a way of just sort of like staying with something that you think is beautiful and honoring it in a certain way. And drawing is a way of kind of honoring the beauty. It's a way of slowing, looking down. And the marks that you make are almost like a kind of an homage to that paying attention. And everyone has a different way of paying attention. And there's no correlate from one person to another between, say, how much he notices, which, and by the way, I noticed that in his work, he's very mechanically kind of oriented. So there's a lot of like machinery, computers, space, that kind of junk. There are other people who are more into like fantasy, and they do similar types of work. We have a faculty member here in our department who teaches for us occasionally, and he does artwork like this. And so it's kind of a style, but it's also just, you can imagine how fun it must be for him to just kind of go at it. And I think it all just comes with patience and practice. So I'll put that link for you guys up. Okay. So what I thought we would do is do a draw along today, and I could do the interior and kind of show you guys the interior, and I'll show you where go to our class, and I'll show you the photo that I'm going to use. And you can see what it looks like for teachers on the other end of. Okay. So for the perspective drawings in the project prompt that I have for you guys, this one, you can either do the exterior or the interior that's due on Monday. So it's up to you. But there's one due Monday, and then there's one due the following Monday. And so I've only put in one interior because I thought we could start out with the exterior and then go with and kind of go with this photo for an interior. But since most of us are already inside somewhere, this is something that you can do in real life, just sitting in a chair in the corner. So I'm going to use this photo. So if you guys want to go onto Canvas and either open up this photo or download this photo, you can follow along with me. And what I'll do is I'll kind of dissect this image. And I'm going to attempt, probably this is folly, but I'm going to attempt to use the chalkboard. There's some kind of there's a way to use maybe what I'll have to, I feel maybe I won't do it. There's a way to put a picture and then draw on it, but I'm not as savvy with it. So I think I won't do it. I won't torture you guys with my unfamiliarity with the canvas. But this is the photo that I'm going to work from. So I'm going to switch my view. So if you guys want to get yourselves together, you can get a piece of paper out. And what I'll do is I will use my mouse to indicate where we have our horizon line in this photo, and go ahead and draw it. Okay. Any questions you guys have? Okay. So what I'll do first, just for the sake of making it easy to visualize what I'm doing in terms of this, because you can't see the outside of my page. So what I'm gonna do is I'll go ahead and just make a little mini square here, which would represent, say, like your paper. Right. So what I've done is I've created a little fake window, which pretend this is my paper, and then this part right here is my desk, right? And I'm gonna be looking at this image right here. Now, let me go back to the image, and I want to just kind of point out some things for you guys that I'm going to be looking at. Whoops, in an effort to organize my drawing. So here's the photo. Now, in the photo, I have lines that are diving down if I start from up here, or you could say they're climbing up, either way. And if I were to lay my pencil along this line here, they're going to converge at some point. You guys can do this. You could lay your ruler on the screen, and they're going to converge at some point. So that convergence is the horizon line, and at the horizon line, these types of lines here of the window frames, pardon me, the window frames are going to be more or less horizontal to the bottom and the top. Now, I'm going to bring your attention down to here on the lower left in this little corner. So I'm looking at where the floor and the walls meet. I'm looking at where the walls and the ceiling meet, and I'm paying attention. So most of you will be like in an office building maybe, or in an apartment. You might have some photos. You won't have as many kind of fantastical windows here like this room, or necessarily open beams like this. I certainly don't. But one of the things to look for is lines that come down, that are closest to you, that dive down, and then lines that are down, that are below you, they come up, right? They rise. So the reason that lines dive down in any picture is because they are above the horizon line. Any lines of architecture that apparently rise from one point to another means that they're below the horizon line. And so if I were to do this, I would guess that the horizon line is somewhere around here. So I'm gonna just, yeah. So the horizon line is right about there. I just laid my pencil on the thing. So why is this important? Well, it's important because I want to figure out where to kind of more or less put my horizon line in my drawing. So I'm going to change back to the page. And what I've done is I've created a window that more or less matches the dimensions, or at least the proportions of the image that I want to draw. So now in this case, this is pretty straightforward. This person was probably standing up, or maybe the camera was on a tripod. But as I look at the image, the horizon line is pretty much like dead center across the horizontal edge, right? So it's going to be about right there. Now, if I had a different photo, or let's say I was in real life, so when you're drawing from life, there are no sort of boundaries. There's no top, there's no sides, there's no bottom, there's just the rest of the world. And so earlier when I asked you guys to create like one of those little window viewers, the viewers are there to sort of create a fake boundary between you and the world, so that you have sort of a stopping point. So this would be the equivalent of our little window. So if you want, when you're drawing in perspective, what you could do is make yourself a little cutout window like we did before, and hold it up to your eye, or hold it out. And I don't know why I'm yawning so much. And that'll help you identify lines that are diving down and lines that are kind of coming up. That's important because if in real life you're drawing something, let's say you're sitting on the floor, right? If you're sitting on the floor, the horizon line is going to be lower relative to your eye level, because the horizon line will be at your eye level, right? Which means that most of the lines will be diving down if you're at the floor, because you're going to be sort of at a lower level. If you're standing up, the horizon line will correspondingly kind of come down. So the higher you go, the lower the horizon line goes. The lower you go, the higher the horizon line goes. And so in this case, it's relatively easy, because that kind of pictorial translation has already been done for me with a camera and a lens. So what the camera captures on film or digitally is what is a mimicry of our own eyes and the lenses of our own eyes. And the lenses of our own eyes match or very similar to the lenses that are used in cameras. So there is a physical, I guess, or an optical resemblance between a photo and what our eyeballs understand as space. So in real life, if I was sitting on the floor, I might put my horizon line lower on the page, because if I wanted to draw the room would be, up here. And I'll just do a quick scribble for you guys down here. So for example, if I'm sitting on the floor and I'm looking up, right? Let's say my horizon line is like going to be down here. That would mean that if I were in a room, a lot of the lines of the room would probably be lower, and most of the lines would be up above, right? And we can have some chairs here, right? Whatever, maybe a table. Okay, maybe a window, the window. So the horizon line's lower here, right? If I were up high, and so this would be low. If I were up high, then perhaps my horizon line, sorry, the horizon line would be higher. I screwed that up because the horizon line will be higher up here, right? If I'm low. Okay, let me redo that. So if your position in the real world, right, is lower, your horizon line will be higher. If your point of view is at a height, then the horizon line will move lower. But it's always at eye level. So if I'm up above, what I might do is I might not have such a steep edge there. I might have a much more gentle edge coming up this way. Maybe my table is a bit higher. Okay, I can see the top of my table, right? And then the top of now I would cut that off. So in other words, the horizon line would be down here. Up here, it's going to be up here, in our case, in the middle of that page. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and begin drawing, and I want to just guide you guys through how to do this. Again, ideally, what I do in these circumstances is the most. I wish we could meet in real life, because I feel like in real life you would really get to understand how this is useful, because I feel like this type of thing and this is where this type of thing is better taught in real life and not online. Because online, what I'm really trying to teach you guys is how to translate the real world that you see from 3 dimensions into 2 dimensions. And one of the arguments I want to make to you guys is that when we work online on a computer, the work of flattening out the world and making it representationally comprehensible on a screen, right? Let's face it, all we're looking at are red, green, and blue pixels that are arranged in particular lightness values and brightness values. And to our mind, all those little pixels look like a chair or a person or a face. But in reality, the work of that's just simply the means through which the real world is being translated into 3 dimensions or 2 dimensions. I know that sounds really convoluted, but it is the case. So if I'm looking at my, I'm going to go back to the photo really quick because I want to show you some assessments that I'm making in my mind's eye. So in my mind's eye, I'm going to use this photo, the edges of this photo as the edges of my page. And as such, I want to look for little cues. So I noticed down here at the bottom of my page, there's a little intersection between this wall and the bottom of the horizon there. And then it looks like the doors, they cross the right vertical of my page. Looks like at the very top of my page, so what I'm saying is I can pretty much like guesstimate. So that's maybe about 1/5 of the way. There, if I split this picture in half, I've got 2 beams on either side and so on. So what I'm doing is I'm creating kind of a visual map for myself, and that's what Kim Jong-gi does too. Is he doesn't just he's drawing what he's imagining already on the page. And it looks like magic, but what's happening really behind the scenes in his brain is that he's already constructed the space such as this. And then what he's doing is he's intuitively, because he's done it for so long, he's intuitively applying some of the rules of perspective to give that illusionistic look and feel to his drawings. So I'll go back to the drawing, and then I'll show you how I'm going to use that. How I'm going to use that strategy. Okay. So before, I noticed that there was the wall that kind of went, up this way. Let's see if I can get that angle there. Okay. I also know that my vanishing point's relatively in the middle of the page, which tells me that either that's the position of the camera. And so if you know, for example, the relative scale of a regular old door, then you could more or less guesstimate at what height the camera was. Okay. And so it looks like the bottom of the floor kind of comes about right there. If I were to look at the very back of that room, that wall, and I started to look at the square that is the wall at the very back of the room, and I kind of blurred my eyes in the photo, it kind of looks like it's off to the left a little bit. It's not dead center, it's off to the left a little bit. And so what I want to do, and it looks like a kind of more or less like a true square. And so I'm gonna put my square in there. I'm also paying attention to the top of that wall. Like, where is that wall? Is it like in the middle of the page? And it looks like, in fact, that I've kind of put it a little bit too high. So this is where that preliminary, the preliminary sketching and gestural kind of mark making come into play, in the sense that it helps you locate the salient parts of your picture to make sure that you can get all the bits and pieces that you want on the page. And again, the point here, I could be super hyper realistic if I really wanted to, and that is one. So I guess I want to just keep repeating that hyper realism is something you can accomplish. That does not mean that you're, in quotes, good at drawing. It just means you have a really perceptive eye. Good at drawing, I think, is so wide open to interpretation that, it's not even, I hesitate to put any kind of like a hierarchy upon people who can say draw something that looks hyper realistic and say that they somehow mastered something, because the ability to observe and replicate is just that. It's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily equal art. And as an artist, that's my main preoccupation is, how does meaning get translated into or through technique. So right now, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to establish some of those basic kind of plotting points for my my drawing, and trying to find my window to make sure I'm still visible. Okay, good. Sorry, guys, I'm just arranging windows on my page here. Please stand by.
Can you see the messages that are being sent or
Yeah, yeah, I can.
okay.
Professor, would you like? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't see that one. Yeah, you definitely apply kind of. That's a good question. So, what I'd like you guys to do is to try to replicate the values that you're seeing in the picture. So, I want you to think of like we're sort of climbing a ladder, and every rung of our ladder along the way is something that I'd like you to tap back into in your drawings as we go forward. So, you know, using the tools for noticing perspective, using the tools of gesture to get the thing down, and then starting to use like your eye that you've developed using negative space, like noticing. So, for example, like when I was looking at the this back square, I had to sort of like in my brain, I had to kind of fuzz out everything else and then really ask like, where is that? Is it off to the left? Is it off to the right? So that, and that's just like a trick that you teach yourself when we were doing the negative space. So yes, please do fill in as much of the values as you can to give it as much life as possible. It'd be great. So yeah, thanks for flagging that for me. I'm sometimes if I don't see your guys's, I have the chat up, but if for some reason you are trying to, you know, communicate something to me and I'm not like seeing it, it's probably because my windows are too cluttered on my desktop. So I have like a bunch of different windows open. So definitely flag me on that. No problem. Okay. So so I'm going to keep going here, and definitely if you guys just chime in, you guys can just chime in with your mic or whatever. But if it doesn't work, you can. I have my I've got my oops, I got the chat open. Okay. So this is these are the sort of the bones of the drawing. Okay, this is the room, and the way it looks like a particular type of lens. And the more you know about photography, you can probably sort that out too. So now what I'm going to do is I can use my pencil to try to figure out the different levels where those windows happen. And so I'm just going to kind of guesstimate. There might be a window here. This would be like that sill that comes up. Then it comes up, and it's about halfway before the next wall comes up, and then there's that rhino looking thing, whatever that is. And then you'll notice that there's kind of a compression that happens up in here as things get a little bit kind of squashed. So once I've established the room, now what I can do is secondarily go in and try to establish the various relationships of, say, the walls or the cracks or the beams. And so right now I'm just trying to get some of those interior walls in. And so this kind of like this little, and what we know we're looking at and what we're looking at are oftentimes, you know, they fight each other. So for example, I drew this bottom ledge here. Give myself a little bit more of a point on the pencil here. So this little bit right here, if you guys are looking at it, is really quite small. And there's another one that comes up here, down, over, up. And then there's the wall that kind of continues. Then there's this kind of rhinoceros looking guy. He's over here. He's not very big. And I'll just go ahead and do that. And then this bit. So if you guys want, you can use your ruler. I find that the ruler tends to sanitize drawings quite a bit. But if you want to, you certainly can, just as a guide. Okay, so there's that. I've got some other stuff up here. All right, and so I'm just trying to keep my lines parallel to each other here. And it looks like there's something else going on. There's like, it looks like the walls have this kind of like almost like a beamwork or something that goes, and it looks like they're inset. So it looks like the walls were built around like the beam kind of cut, there's a beam that cuts across here. Beams, by the way, go, you guys, posts go up and down, beams go across. So I'm just gonna put in a really quick line right there, and then looks like about halfway between this wall is another beam, and that looks like it. And that looks pretty good. So then I can kind of use my ruler. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll line up the edge here and here. And so if that kind of looks okay, it looks a little bit off. So I'm gonna. Are you guys seeing what I'm seeing in terms of the? And I don't know if you have the photo up or not, but these are those. Looks like almost like it's kind of like a inset piece of masonry. And what's interesting is you can see how perfect that wall is right there. It kind of comes up. It's not perfectly straight. And then this guy right here comes down, and then I'll go ahead and get this up here. Here. I don't usually use a ruler, but you know, it does help sometimes, especially with like windows and that kind of thing. It can help kind of orient things a little bit better. I don't know if you guys can hear that cat or not, but she loves my son, and he's outside working, and she can't stand to be without him. So she's having a heart attack because he's outside without her. Well, I'm kind of cheating using the ruler, but there's no cheating really in art, so no big deal. And so what I'm doing is I'm using the ruler to just kind of give myself some guidelines that I can work around, use when I do the windows. So, all right, I'm getting there, right? So there's also these other little bits and pieces in here that look like they are. It looks like the floor kind of continues with this little. It looks like it was like some kind of a storage space at sometimes. And you know, you guys, I'll leave it up to you to kind of see how many elements you want to include. So if you feel like, you know, I'm not drawing that rhino, that's okay. I don't care. You don't have to draw the rhino if you don't want to. And I got this kind of here. I guess that's that guy there. Okay. So let's see. There's that window there. Oop, okay. So I'll put some kind of indicator lines in here so you guys can see what's what. Okay. Psst, oh, stop it. So I'm trying to get the basics of the room down now. You guys can come back in and kind of lighten up some of those lines a little bit as you go. So the first thing I want to do is I'm gonna establish the room, and I want to try to get the beams in there. And so one of the ways I can do that is I can actually just kind of measure, or I can use something on the page and orient the beams. And I've noticed that if I were to make a point like more or less in the middle here, I noticed that there's a beam that's kind of off to if I look at where the beam hits the top of the page and I use my pencil like this, it's off to the side right there, like right about there. And that's kind of like where that first beam comes in, and it kind of comes down that way. Then there's another bit of it here that's this way. Okay. And then off to the side of that center point is another. This one looks almost straight up and down, but not quite. And again, I'm gonna make sure that I have these separated out. And then this one over here. This beam, there's also a beam. So this, when I did that, the top of that beam, I was doing the walls. So I also want to make sure that I have that other, the rim joist beam there. And then we've got this thing will come like that. And it kind of comes down. So I'm making sure that if there's spaces here, but there's corresponding spaces back there. And that's the bottom there. It comes up, it gets quite large at the bottom. Now I'm not using any ruler on this. I'm just kind of going for it. And so there is another little beam that kind of comes up on this little wall right here, but it goes off. So in fact, now that I'm noticing it, it ends up kind of doing something like this. And then there's that. Okay. So notice how I'm using I'm using lines that are somewhat provisional. I'm not like dedicating myself to it because I'm still in the phase right now of just trying to get down the basics of the drawing. And so you'll notice, I'm sure you guys have noticed already, that as you become more and more comfortable drawing, you'll notice that your techniques you'll start to hone in on certain ways that you like to do stuff. So for me, I kind of like to I just kind of like to kind of make these really kind of scribbly marks. I have kind of a scribbly style anyways. And that's okay with me. It's just who I am. I can't do anything about it at this point. I could try to fight it, which is really useful when you're kind of learning how to draw, because it helps you kind of in the negative, define your own predilections as an artist. I find that like doing exercises suck because you're not doing it the way that you're wired to do it. But I feel like that the way that the art education goes is that trying to give people opportunities to do things in ways that run perhaps counter or that run parallel to your own your own way of doing things is a way of showing you how your own style looks and just what you like to do. And so you use what's useful, you chuck what's not useful. You know what I mean? So it's no big deal. So here's a beam right here. I made that line before. Looks like it comes down a little bit here. So I'm gonna kind of shoot this beam in this way. Notice I'm not worrying anything about what's in the room. I'm just trying to get the space of the room established first. And then down here, that bottom bit. And then here's that other kind of little area. It's kind of hidden behind some furniture. Oops, sorry, this one. But in reality, it kind of cuts back that way. And then the beam kind of comes like that. And yeah. So I have kind of the basics now. At this point, I have a choice. I could either just really go in and start to do some of the brick detail in there. It looks like there's some kind of patchwork on the brick here. Looks like a little kind of broken area there, a little broken area here, a broken area here. Okay. And then there's this kind of wonky bit. And then this is the, so this part right here, this is that kind of shadow area. I can just kind of provisionally shoot that in. Just to give, so what's nice, you guys, is once you start kind of getting the, once you start shooting in some of the shadow, the drawing just comes pops right to life. So all this kind of preliminary stuff is really so that when you can really enjoy your shadows. I find that the time I don't enjoy elaborating the drawing is when I don't have a good kind of foundation, or I don't feel like I have a good foundation. And then also here, I could use my cross contour technique to kind of put some lines in like this. And also, you guys don't have to do a continuous tone drawing. If you guys wanted to use some of your optical blending, optical value techniques, like lines and that kind of stuff, you can certainly do that, no problem. Again, I'm really more interested, I'm not interested in having a bunch of folks that can draw like robots. I want you guys to find your own style, your own voice, and your own hand. And so just to kind of go back, and why that's important, when I was talking about Tolkien, is that Tolkien, for example, like when, as a writer, kind of what he said was, if you're going to make up stuff, if you're going to invent worlds, and this could be worlds that you invent, you know, with your pencil or your pen, or maybe you're telling the story, it doesn't really matter. But that one of the things that kind of allows people to sink into your world or to sink into your artwork is that you have established for yourself a kind of set of rules that that make your imaginary world or your imaginary drawing space plausible. And when things are plausible, people will go along with pretty much anything. They're just like, you know what, I'm with you, I'll do this, I'll go along, because, and that's that whole willful suspension of disbelief. And I think that's just a fancy way of saying, yeah, I'll play along with you, you know, I'll play along with what you're throwing down. So now what I'm doing is I'm going through here and I'm just noticing some of those larger shadows and I'm blocking them in. And again, I'm using that same kind of technique of noticing the shapes that I tried to teach you guys when we were doing the negative space drawings. getting I'm getting a little bit sloppy, but that's okay. These are very light lines that I can kind of come back in later and clean it up with my eraser, right? And yeah, it looks like over here, it looks like there's some kind of like a broken bit of kind of, you know, brick and stuff there. I feel like my wall here is not quite big enough. That line right there is not necessary, I think. I got to move this guy over a little bit, but you know, I'm working on it. There's that, and then there's, oh, I see, I did it in the wrong one. Did I? No, I didn't. Okay. I see. Okay, cool. So, and now what I can do in this case is, now that I've kind of more or less got the room going down, I could start playing around with shooting in some of those, some of the lumber that's up on the ceiling. I can start playing around with the table. So the table is going to be, I'm going to just kind of eyeball where the table is, and it looks like it's about kind of, it's about pictorially, it's about like right here where it is. It's kind of, it's a little bit smaller. So, and it almost looks like the leg of the table is like dead center. So it looks like maybe I have to move mine, but I'm just going to, again, at a certain point, you'll stop, you ought to stop referencing the location of things from the photo, and then start to, because you're, again, like that whole thing about your own world, there might be some minor discrepancies between your drawing and the thing that you're drawing, but that's the point, is that translation between the three-dimensional to the two-dimensional. And so at a certain point, you're going to switch from prioritizing what you're looking at to what you're beginning to draw. And that's when you're starting to make art, in my view. I feel like that's when the thing that's in front of you is actually has enough of its own rules, so to speak, that that it can kind of run under its own power. And so anything you put in that space, much like Kim Jong-gi did, seems plausible, and it seems intentional, and it communicates just as effectively as if it were a photograph, if that's your point, right? So this, actually, what I realized I did is that the table crosses the top of that. It crosses the top of the bottom of this line back here. So if I were to look at my table, I just realized, so what I want to do is, if I want to get that table in there, it's going to cross this line here, which is the back line of that wall, and then looks like the table comes up here, cuts like that, and then I can't see the back of it, but it kind of cuts this way. Oops, I think it's a bit bigger. Come on, table, help me out here. So my table leg here, boop, boop, comes up. I think I've got it, still got it a little bit off. Darn it. What I'm looking at, you guys, is I'm looking at the relative where the table intersects this line and this line. And so I've noticed that the edge of the table is actually somewhere like right here, and it comes down. And when I look at it relative to this and this, it's more or less, it's just behind there. So the table leg kind of ends. When I look at this and this, and I draw a parallel line from the bottom of that table over, it looks like it's about right there. So so that's what I'm doing here, is I'm referring to the photo, then I'm referring back to my drawing. And so I'm kind of playing around visually with two different maps of the same reality. And then that comes over and down, and then it looks like it takes up quite a lot of space, but in reality, in the photo, it doesn't actually. I think it's mainly because of our kind of cultural association with tables as important, where important things happen. Now I can get rid of some of this stuff. Get my other little table leg in there. And then this one's coming down kind of in the middle. And there's my table, more or less. It looks like we got some books on the table, and just to get the books in there, I'm just going to kind of rough scribble in some books, and I can go back in and get really persnickety about that later. Then there's like a cone thing on there, and there's a chair in the back. Some beautiful shadows going on back there. This is very dense, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of knock in some of that density with my pencil. There we go. Not too shabby, I guess. Now, of course, I can see that this is a very clean line. I can go in later, kind of tidy that up. Same thing with this. I can kind of tidy this up a little bit too, kind of using my pencil with a little bit more pressure on it. Now, I tend to not commit to really dense line work right away because I want to be able to erase. And then usually my dense line work, like if I really want to go in there and scribble in some really deep dark values, that's when I'll do it sort of later on. So that way I have it kind of cued in, and I'm not worried about, because sometimes I'm not worried about not being able to erase it, because sometimes when you're really scribbling down and getting a really dark mark, and then you realize, oh shoot, I'm a little bit off. It's kind of a little bit difficult to erase it out because you've really ground in that the pigment into the paper. Okay, so I'm going to try to, now these chairs, they're irregular, but again, I'm just using that same techniques that we did in class of just kind of approximating it first, and then kind of like sneaking up on it, just sneaking up on it. We got a bunch of other little chair nubbins here coming through, and then there's one over here. Right. There's pretty little chairs. And it looks like I need to open up the space over here a little bit. Got a little bit lazy with my pencil there. There we go. Okay. And boy, you guys get extra points if you guys can draw this. If you guys dedicate yourself to drawing this antler chair, I swear you guys get extra credit. That looks like something out of a Game of Thrones or something. So right now I'm just going to put in some rough antler looking things, and there's that kind of really fascinating shape of the chair. Looks like a pretty intimidating chair to sit in, actually. And then it looks like we got some antler action going on down there. Antler action here. Okay. So again, this is more of a mental note for me to go back in later and start playing around with the different kind of details of that chair. I usually leave those kinds of things till a little bit later, or until I'm feeling slightly more inspired. So now what I'll try to do is I'll try to get some of these the larger chairs in there. And again, I'm just, hey, hold on a bit. Can't come over here. What I do is I try to look at where the chair intersects at areas in my drawing. So for example, the chair, the top of this, come on, babe, please don't do that. Come on, go over there. The top of the chair, it looks like if I what I could do is, in order to give myself a relative placement point, what I've noticed is that the top of the chair is is in a similar spot to the the mullions on the window. And so what I could do is I could try to shoot in some of these the kind of window panes, or you know, and this comes sweeping down there. That needs some adjustment, but I just wanted to kind of put it in there so that I could locate the chair. So it looks like if I have this, if I'm paying attention to this cross member on the door, and it looks like there's some kind of a and if I were to take that trajectory and I line it up, it kind of looks like the chair, the top of that fancy looks like a mid-century kind of 50s chair. Comes around that way. And then down. And then over. And it's going to look weird. It's going to look weird at first. But I'm trying to get the. I love that chair, by the way. I'd love to have a chair like that in my house. And crosses over and it comes down and over this way. Up. Has this kind of beautiful swoop. And there's one of the legs that comes out like that. And the other one looks like it kind of intersects here. Again, you know, because it's in a perspective, we can kind of create some guidelines for those chair legs. And the chair legs have it looks like my chair could use a little bit more space here, but I'm just going to go for it. And then I'm looking at when I'm trying to figure out where that arm goes. One of the things I'm looking for is like, where is it relative to, say, the edge of the floor and the wall? And it looks like I've got a little bit of a space like that. So that's one mark. And I can look, where is that little turn? And if I line it up with if I were to put my pencil horizontally on the screen and line it up like this, it kind of comes out at about the middle of the center of the door frame. And so there I have. So that's what I mean by using your drawing as its own reference point. There we go. And this will take some cleanup, but this is my first kind of go at it. And so don't worry if your first go is not like, you know, spot on or whatever. Like, not everybody's going to be able to draw like Kim Jong-ji. I tell you that. I mean, I certainly can't just like whip it out like that. That takes like years and years of experience and dedication. So. So that's going to take a little bit more kind of fiddling around. I can get rid of some of this stuff too. I'm not super happy with that yet, but you know what? That's okay. It looks like this could kind of come in a little bit like there. And then if I wanted, I could shoot in some value in here. Notice I'm using my pencil overhand. Shoot in some value like there, and then it comes down. What's also nice is this has like a little detail in there. That's the stitching, and yeah, it's kind of weird drawing stuff that you may or may not be familiar with, like this chair. I've never seen a chair like this, and so you know, it needs a little bit more work. I think this can kind of come down a little bit here. There's more of a smile to it, I think. And then over here, there's this other chair. And I'm looking at the other chair and I'm looking, where's the top of that chair? And it looks like it's just about like right there. I look at where's the foot of the chair relative to that kind of angle on the wall. It looks like it's kind of coming at a pretty tight angle down this way. Then it kind of folds, kind of comes down that way a little bit, and up. And once I have one of those lines in there, I can actually just kind of start to get the rest of them in there too. I guess it's like a wingback chair, is that what they call it? There we go. Now, I'm not worried about those lines underneath just quite yet. And I'm noticing too that the handle of this is kind of comes like that and then down. And then this kind of reaches over. I've got my proportions a little bit off. You guys can tell because I think this is a little bit too big. And that's where you can come in and erase, or you can just go with it, really. And the main thing I'm looking for in these with you guys is just, are you getting the kind of fundamentals of the perspectival translation between what you're looking at on a one screen and then on your page on the paper? Because we're basically drawing illusions. This is all illusionistic space. I would go back in there and kind of tidy that up too. Okay. This is such a beautiful shape. I always love shapes like this, where it's like kind of swoopy and curvy, I mean. And so at this point, what I would do, I could do the rhino guy, but that's up to you if you don't want to tackle that. And then way back here, we've got these other little kind of chairs. It's like it kind of crosses over. There's like club chairs or something like that. Okay, and then there's that haunting skull thing in the background. And then it looks like there's some lights and that kind of thing. The other thing too is that this looks weird, possibly because I don't have a shadow underneath it. So I can just kind of pop in a little shadow real quick. And then I can also kind of shoot in some shadows here for my chair. And at this point, it just becomes kind of fun because then you can just kind of go kind of play around with the different parts of the drawing, filling in things, erasing things. Like I can go in here and erase this, sort of tidy it up a little bit. And then pay attention to the different values. And so like up in here, you know, I can come in here and start to kind of add in some lines that correspond with the general, you know, direction of the window. And the other thing too is that this is by way of teaching you guys techniques, but drawings have purposes, right? Like they all have different purposes. Like you'll have a drawing that you might require of an architect for building instructions, or a designer for a garden, just to get a vision of what the flowers will look like, or an interior space, like we want to do this. And so just remember that you build a drawing. It's I think my cat moved my camera, you guys. Oh, you guys, this cat. Right, sorry. Okay, let me make sure I've got my. Oh, cat, stop. All right, guys, I'm sorry. I think the cat's moving. I think I might have to call this one done here. Over there. All right. Sorry. All right. So I think I'm going to call this one good at this point. And that's just by way of kind of getting the nuts and bolts of the drawing in. I'm sorry that the camera moved, but yeah, if you guys are, you know, if you can get down this far, then you can really start to go in and start to fine tune some of those details in your drawing. But again, like remember, where's your horizon line? And that's going to help you compose your drawing on the page. And it's also going to help you situate the different elements of the room that you're trying to draw. And then once you have that, those kind of the structure, the kind of skeleton of the space, then all this other stuff is just like kind of extra, and you can put it in there, but all the table, the chairs, they all end up corresponding to, they all use the same logic, the spatial logic of 3 dimensions in 2-dimensional space. Okay, do you guys feel like that's will get you most of the way there? Are you guys still with me? Did I put you guys to sleep? Probably put you to sleep. All right, well, I'm going to sign off, and then I'll pop this up on our page so that you guys can see it, and work along with me doing that drawing. And then or you can draw your own space in your own house. All right, okay, everybody, I look forward to seeing your drawings on Monday. Try and get one of your drawings done by Monday of next week, by Sunday. And that way we can have a little critique, and I'll catch up on my grading over the weekend for you guys. Okay? Have a great weekend.
Thank you.